Was selling your value versus communicating your value. I think we've all heard the adage, people don't like to be sold, they love to buy. So sitting before someone in HR, hoping to get that job, sometimes may feel like having to do a sales job. You're selling yourself to this other person. You are competing against countless others, and this is your one chance to turn the head of the buyer and close that deal because it took you so much time, energy, effort just to get the interview, so you gotta sell them. But I gotta warn you, there is a difference in selling your value versus communicating your value. And do the two approaches have different outcomes? On today's episode, we're going to hear from a military spouse who is also a military employment counselor, as well as a human resource specialist for a Berkshire Hathaway Company. I think Warren Buffett, John's Manville, whose products are used in a wide variety of industries, including building products, aerospace, automotive, transportation, filtration, commercial interiors, waterproofing, and wind energy. The list goes on. It's a proud member of the Berkshire Hathaway family of companies, and they serve in more than 80 countries across the globe. So welcome to the Military Wire with Mike Schindler. This is the podcast where we interview America's most elite men and women who have served this country. We share their stories of overcoming, their proven lessons in leadership, and their journey to finding mission and purpose. Our guest today is Michelle Olson, who is a military spouse. She's also formerly a family readiness group leader, still a military employment counselor, and she's kind of worked her way through the HR recruiting and today serves as a human resource specialist for a global company based out of Colorado. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you.
Yeah, I'm loving your background. You know, we talk about America's most elite men and women, and that's who we interview on the show outside of this new series of HR. And I gotta put the spouse right in America's most elite men and women. So first of all, thank you for being a spouse. Thank you for surviving being a spouse. Let me put it that way, because I know it can't be easy. So tell us your experience as a spouse. And what drove you to kind of become a military employment counselor?
Oh, great. Well, yes, I'm very passionate about our military and our spouses as well, of course. So when we think to our military spouses, if we start there and think about their employment needs, they need a chance to be involved and be part of something greater, and sometimes need that financial part as well with working. And so, like for myself, my husband deployed 4 days after our second son was born. And knowing that I was going to have to be, alone for a year, of course, alone being not with, I was so thankful to have family and friends and my FRG group around me during that time period. But I also know that I needed to work, not for just money, but for the mental part of it as well.
For the sanity part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And so having two small children, I needed to find a job that was more part-time, but that I could do, and then also be able to afford what I was doing. And so it took different avenues of trying to find a job, and was thankful for some of the resources that were available either on base or online. And so I took advantage of those, but realized that there was a gap there for wanting to help make sure that we got our spouses hired as well.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting about that is, we oftentimes talk about, making that transition from active duty into the civilian sector. But you bring up another great point, Michelle, which is, as a spouse, especially when somebody's still on active duty, is that need for spouses to feel like they're adding value, number one, not only inside the home, but outside the home, for mental sanity, but sometimes also for financial reasons. And that, I think, is oftentimes overlooked. We see that, spouses have so much to contribute, and yet oftentimes we overlook it. And so thank you for just diving into it. So, and that's kind of what led you into the military employment counselor field. Is that right? Michelle? Hello?
Do you hear me now?
Oh, I hear you now. Yep.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that. So when my husband returned and life seemed to start getting back to normal, as it does when he came back from deployment, I realized that it was now my turn to want to give back with some of the folks that came across and helped me, that I really wanted to passionately help them work. So I worked within our family readiness group to help people that way, but then got a job through family programs to help do Yellow Ribbon, and then also through Department of Defense became an employment counselor through them, and worked in partnership with the Yellow Ribbon program to help work with a lot of our Guard reservists and veterans and spouses.
I think that's just so awesome. Well, I opened this conversation, this episode, with a comparison between selling value and communicating value, and I think there's such anxiety around just getting an interview. The veterans sometimes just want to burp up all their accomplishments when sitting before HR. Like, man, this is one of my chance. I got to sell it. I got to close it. So when we talk about communicating value, what do you find based on your experience, both on active duty and then post? What do you find is the best way to do this?
So absolutely, we have to come, and it all comes down to making sure you know what the job description says. So when it comes to getting that job or getting that interview, you need to know that they are trying to find a specific position to fill. Unfortunately, I've worked with some of our higher ranking folks coming out of the military that were thinking, I'm a higher level position and I deserve a higher level position. And absolutely, we want to, as an employer, absolutely, we want to help and make sure we give back to our veterans, but we have to be a company as well. And the positions that we have open are the ones we're trying to fill. So if you apply for a position, one, you need to tell us that you would qualify for that position based on the job description. So do you meet those basic qualifications? And then helping to make sure that those are on your resume are how you're going to get that over that first hump of maybe thousands of applications that might have come in, or thousands of resumes. You have to show that you meet those qualifications. And so that, yes, your military expertise most likely will come into play. And so utilizing different tools that you have at your access now there's a website called ONET Online. There's military translators out there that can help translate what your military occupation code could be, that you could use keywords on your resume that would help match up that job description and what your abilities as a veteran or spouse were. And so that's very important. So then when it comes to the next part of you did your resume, you did a great job, and now it's time for that interview. So now you still have to think that they are trying to fill that role based on that job description. So you need to sell yourself on that job. How can you be the best asset for the company based on that job?
Yeah, that's good. I love what you're talking about there. I love that you're talking about the identifying the position, number one, and then really showcasing value. And I think that's what we talk about. The difference between selling versus communicating is you can communicate value, or when you have the value, it's easier to communicate as opposed to selling. I think sometimes when we sell, we're trying to convince somebody of our value. But if we already understand our value, it's easier to communicate it. Is that a good way to phrase it?
Yeah, absolutely. And always making sure that you can practice, I would say showing that value is very important. So get with your friends, get with some other leaders around you to help say, hey, I have this interview coming up. I need to make sure I can show that value, show that I'm the best fit. Your local workforce center. I know a lot of great workforce centers want to help do those mock interviews for you and give you that feedback. And then as a veteran, you get priority of access into those workforce centers. So don't be afraid to utilize some of those great tools out there.
But Michelle, what you're talking about requires work. I mean, uh, so is what I'm hearing you say is you kind of got to work at this to get the job. You got to work at getting noticed. You got to work at getting the interview. You got to work at crushing the interview or doing well in the interview. It really is work, and it is going to take work to get the job because it's a competitive marketplace. Is that fair? I mean, really, we need to be breaking down this process as understand that there's going to be work in each phase of this phases of this, and you really need to learn how to communicate your value.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And doing follow through with talking with those hiring managers or the recruiters and making sure you're stay up to date because you have to understand that they're busy too. And there's worlds that are going around all around them. They might be in charge of a million different things. And this one position, I know you need a job, you want a job, but you have to understand there's the human factor on the other side as well, and know that they're busy, they're trying to get all sorts of things done, and they want to have you join. Just be patient with them and understand that the process, unfortunately nowadays, just because of all the rules and regulations that a lot of our HR folks have to follow, there is a process involved. So making things go really quick, unfortunately, just doesn't happen anymore. So a lot of times if you're trying to get into your mid to bigger companies, it is just know it's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's definitely good to know. So you have been a part of not only interviewing for your own job, but certainly helping other people interview. When you see veterans interview, what have you found to be some of the common missteps in the interview process? Have you seen something, a parallel across the board that you're like, boy, this seems to be a consistent behavioral pattern amongst our veterans?
Yeah, I would say it would possibly be showing your fit. And so, what I mean by showing your fit is that you would be a great team player. And although you most likely were in the military with all the great individuals you had to come across within your tenure with the military, just knowing that the fit part is very important. They want a culture that's going to be great. So if you are pretty stoic or answer all the questions very maybe more like you were at basic training and scared and not kind of coming out of your shell, that's going to intimidate them that maybe you might not be a fit in that regard with maybe you meet all the basic qualifications, but are you going to fit in with the company's culture and the team? So
Well, how does one know
to
this though? So
sure.
and not to interrupt, but well, I did interrupt, but it's but to how do you study culture inside of a company? Like what? Like I could look at a company and I can say, you know what? I think I would do awesome there. I would add value. Here's the 5 areas I'd add value. This is how I think I'd perfect it. This is the contribution I can make. But how does one study value and understand the fit prior to getting to the interview?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'm going to say always do your homework.
Yeah.
So, obviously you're going to do your homework based on that job description, but look at the company. Do they have values like John's Manville does right now? Their top priorities are people, are making sure that there's a good experience for not only just the customers, but for all employees as well. And so making sure you read and study their websites, other documentations. Maybe there's some great news stories that came out. Maybe there's news about them doing a fall cleanup day at, the local park, or maybe there's, they gave so much dollars to, some organization, or maybe they just want a really great contract. But being able to come in and say at the interview, maybe as an icebreaker, or maybe as just, a point where it might be quiet in the room, you can say, hey, I saw you guys just won this great contract, or that you guys are involved in this type of environment. That really shows that you're not only doing your homework on the company, but that you're showing interest, that you want to work there and that you want to be part of that culture.
So does that not happen often? Because when you're describing that to me, I'm thinking, all the years when I was in corporate, I would certainly do that, right? The environmental scan, I'd understand what was going on with the culture of the company. And I just kind of thought that was commonplace. But from your description, it sounds like that almost is like a unicorn approach, meaning it happens, but not often. Is that true?
That is very true. Is very true. And I'm going to go back to, practicing. Go back and at least do it in the mirror or talk with someone about that interview, because you really do want to show what you can do on your personal side, and be the human that we all know you could be, but make sure you have some of those soft skills and information going forward.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. I mean, this is fascinating to me, simply because I thought some of this stuff was just common sense. But as you describe it and as you share it, I think it's going to add so much value, because maybe there's something, over the generations where some stuff has been lost just in translation. And to your point, remember that the person sitting across the table doing the interview is also human. So to create that human bond, that human interaction, to create that dialogue, I think is so important. So when you talk, let's talk about the value that veterans bring to the workplace, because I know, your companies hire veterans. You've been a part of, helping veterans get jobs. You obviously being a spouse, you've got a job, your husband, etc. So how should one communicate their value to a certain position? Like, how do I best do that? Like, I've done things in, my military occupation, but how do I communicate my value to you? What's the best way to do that?
So again, I'm going to go back to that job description. So if it says that in that, and it comes down to just that basic qualifications, literally, when it comes time for the recruiter to look at your resume, they're looking, maybe 5-10 seconds max. Do you meet those basic qualifications? And so that's the value to get to the next step. And then at the interview, you still maybe have to reiterate some of those basic qualifications, but then also you can bring out your transferable skills that you have, your value that you can bring. So how many years of leadership do you have? How many people did you lead? Talk about that. Talk about your different trainings that you had that maybe could come up. And I can tell you right now, in an interview setting, chances are at least some of your questions are going to be situational based questions. So they're really going to want to pull out to kind of get to know you more. They're going to want to try and learn more about how you would handle situations, and which is great for our military folks, because chances are they have some really great stories. And so you're going to want to tell these stories that are truthful, of course, but that you're going to come across as that team player, that you've got some extra skills, that results of what you've done are have benefited not only our military, our troops, our families, our country. And so be ready to share some of those examples.
Yeah, I love that. Be sure you have the stories ready to prove that you can actually add value. I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your company. I tried to give it justice. I'm sure I probably did a misstep here or there on it, but if I'm not mistaken, you guys are looking to hire. You guys love to hire the best candidate. Obviously, if they're veterans, that's helpful. But tell us a little bit about your company and what you're looking for.
Yeah. So again, we value anyone trying to apply and abide by all the different regulations. Our veterans are definitely dear to our heart, because we want to, give back as a company and ensure that, what can we do to help them along? I would love to connect with anyone on LinkedIn, would be probably the best avenue. And if there are open positions that we have, and they're all through our jm.com website, so Johns Manville, you go to Johns Manville, Google it, or just go to jm.com. Search for those open positions, and literally they're all over the world. But when you come across a position that you think you would really be a great fit for, connect with me and message me, and I'd love to help get an introduction to someone who might be able to help you with the next step.
See, I love that. So how do they make, because we talked about this on a previous show, not enough people do this, is connecting with HR on a personal level prior to either applying or even after they're applying. They just kind of set it in hope, and you're already offering on the front end, hey, connect with me in advance, and maybe we can talk through this. I love that approach. Michelle, how do they find you on LinkedIn?
Sure. So you can search for me I'm Michelle Olson, Olson. And then I have my SHRM certification after that. So the SHRM CP certification, and I'm currently out of Grand Junction, Colorado. So I think that might be the easiest way to find me. Or if there's a link I can give you my direct link to connect with me.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Michelle, thank you for being on the show. And audience, please visit jm.com for more information. Great company, lots of opportunity, global opportunity. So be sure you check those guys out. And for those of you who are interested in our Discovering Your Post-Service Identity, Prepare, Plan, Execute on Your Best Year Ever After Transition program, you can visit us at OperationMilitaryFamily.com, or you can DM me on LinkedIn. Michelle, thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you for all you do.